She does not desire you. She desires a solution to a riddle of which you are merely a clue. A woman's desire is a room with no doors. A man spends his entire life walking its perimeter, tracing the seamless, velvet-draped walls, searching for a handle, a keyhole, a secret latch. He brings his strength, his wit, his ambition, his tenderness, all of them tools meant to pry it open. He is convinced that inside this room lies a treasure. Her true self, her unconditional love, the final, placid harbor for his restless soul. This is the first and most profound misunderstanding. And it is the one that will ultimately break you. You are not the key. You are just another man knocking on a wall that has absorbed the echo of 1,000 fists before you. Freud, that old grim cartographer of our inner darkness, called woman the dark continent, not out of malice, but out of a terrifying honesty. He meant that her psychic landscape is fundamentally unknowable to the masculine mind, because it is governed by a different set of laws, a different kind of hunger. Her desire is not a straightforward vector like a man's. It is not an arrow shot at a target. It is a vacuum, a beautiful, ornate, perfectly shaped void. And her life is a quest to find something, anything, that can fill it. You, with your grand plans and your aching heart, mistake this void for a space that is custom-made for you. You see a vacancy, and you apply for the job. You think her longing is a question, and you are the answer. But the void is not a question. It is the engine of her being. It is what makes her move and change and create and destroy. To fill it would be to kill her. So she invites you in. She lets you believe you are making progress. She admires the tools you use, your strength, your intellect. She might even let you believe you have found a way inside. But the room is a mirage. The treasure is a lie. You are not exploring her. You are exploring the labyrinth of your own inadequacy, projected onto her perfect, silent surface. There is a strange, half-forgotten fable from the sun-scorched trade routes of the Silk Road. They spoke of a jinni, a spirit of the oasis, who took the form of a beautiful woman who never spoke. She would simply sit by the water's edge under the merciless sun, her eyes holding the deep, cool promise of the well. Caravans would stop, and men, driven half-mad by the heat and the emptiness of the desert, would be drawn to her. They would feel an overwhelming urge to make her speak. One would boast of his wealth, laying out silks and spices at her feet. She would watch, silent. He would leave, defeated. Another would confess his deepest fears, his sins, his secret shames, hoping his vulnerability would be the key. She would listen, impassive. He would crawl away, hollowed out. A third would try to enrage her, to mock her, to force any reaction at all. The jinni's desire was not for their gifts or their souls. Her desire was to be a perfect, unbreachable vessel, to watch them pour themselves out into her silence until they were empty. She fed on their futile attempts to fill her. This is the nature of the test. She presents you with the beautiful void of her desire and watches to see what you will do with it. Will you try to fill it with your ego, with your wealth, with your philosophies? Will you get angry when it does not yield? Will you fall apart when you realize its depths are infinite? She is not testing your strength. She is testing the limits of your substance. She is watching to see how long it takes you to evaporate. The modern psychologies of attraction, with their talk of evolutionary strategy and compatibility metrics, are like men trying to map the ocean with a yardstick. They can measure the surface currents, the tides, the temperature, but they can tell you nothing of the crushing pressure of the abyss, or of the strange, pale, eyeless creatures that thrive in its absolute darkness. Recent studies, published in journals with sober, academic titles, talk about female cryptic choice, the subconscious mechanisms by which a woman assesses a man's genetic fitness, a sterile name for a terrifying process. It means that even when she is smiling at you, even when she is praising you, there is a part of her, an ancient, ruthless part, that is subjecting you to 1,000 silent trials you will never be aware of. The first step toward the strange liberation we are seeking is to abandon the quest, to stop trying to open the room, to realize that her desire is not a puzzle for you to solve. It is her own private, sacred, and dangerous universe. You are, at best, a tourist. At worst, an invader. Your role is not to understand her, but to understand yourself in the blinding, terrifying light of her unknowability. So I ask you this, you, the locksmith of a lock that does not exist. You have spent so long trying to be the key. Has it ever occurred to you that she enjoys the beautiful, intricate shape of the keyhole far more than any door it might open? She does not want your heart. She wants to know if you can survive its removal. So, you've stood before the locked room. You've knocked and received no answer. And now, foolishly, you've decided the way to gain entry is with gifts. You offer your time, your resources, your vulnerability. You lay them at her feet like a supplicant before a goddess, believing your generosity is a testament to your love. Let me share a piece of exhausted gossip from the gilded cage of human relations. What you call a gift, she calls a biopsy. Every offering you make is a sample of your substance, which she will take back to her private laboratory to analyze under a cold, unwavering light. She is not assessing your love. She is assessing your viability, your stability, your utility. This is the second, more terrifying truth about female desire. It is not a passive void. It is an active, ceaseless, and ruthless intelligence agency. Its sole mission is to determine if you are a sound investment or a liability. When she accepts your extravagant gift, she is not thinking, "He loves me." She is thinking, "He has resources to spare." This indicates stability. When you open up to her, sharing your deepest wounds, she is not thinking, "He trusts me." She is thinking, "Let me examine the nature of his weaknesses. Are they the noble scars of a warrior, or the weeping sores of a perpetual victim?" You are playing checkers, my friend. She is playing a game so ancient and complex it has no name. Every move you make, every piece you sacrifice in the name of affection, she sees as a tactical decision. You think you are being romantic. She knows you are revealing your position. Freud's concept of the superego, that internalized voice of judgment and authority born from the father, has a dark twin in this dynamic. She becomes the externalized arbiter of your worth, the smiling executioner who holds the power to validate or condemn your very masculinity. The emotional guillotine isn't a sudden violent event. It is the slow, agonizing process of placing your neck on the block, day after day, and waiting for her verdict. In the decadent twilight years of the Florentine Republic, they told a story of the courtesan Isabella, whose cruelty was matched only by her beauty. She would entertain suitors in her riverside villa, a place filled with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the sound of muted lutes. She had only one rule for any man who wished to win her favor. He had to bring her a living gift, but he could not ask what became of it. One nobleman brought her a nightingale in a silver cage, a bird that sang with the heartbreak of angels. She accepted it with a beatific smile. The next day, the cage was empty. "It missed the sky," she said. her eyes full of theatrical pity. Another brought her a white wolfhound, loyal and strong. A week later, the dog was gone. He was too noble for a leash, she explained. This went on for years. The test was never about the quality of the gift. The test was to see if the man could endure the casual, smiling, complete annihilation of the thing he offered. Could he watch his sacrifice be consumed and still come back for more? Could he be diminished, piece by piece, and call it love? This is the silent question she asks when you give her your heart. Yes, it is a beautiful beating thing, she seems to say. But what I truly need to know is, can you live without it? The evolutionary psychologists, our modern-day phrenologists, will call this hypergamy. They will create charts and graphs showing the female imperative to mate up, to seek a partner of higher or equal status. But this clinical language robs the phenomenon of its terrible spiritual weight. It is not just about money or status. It is a profound, instinctual gravitational pull towards sovereignty. She is on a level so deep it is inaccessible to her own conscious mind, repulsed by neediness. She is drawn to the man who seems to need nothing from her, because he is the only man who is safe to need. The fragile, flickering hope in this grim scenario is not to find a woman who does not test. There is no such creature. The hope is to become a man who is untestable, not by building higher walls or wearing thicker armor, but by fundamentally changing the nature of your gifts. You must stop giving her things that are pieces of you. Your validation, your time, your emotional stability, these are not gifts. These are the pillars of your own temple. To offer them up for her approval is to invite her to become the architect of your soul. Instead, your presence in her life must be the gift. Your world, your purpose, your mission. That is the offering. It is a world she is invited to share, to enjoy, to participate in. But it is not a world you are willing to dismantle to make her more comfortable. When you operate from this center of unshakable purpose, the dynamic of the test inverts. She no longer holds the power to validate or diminish you, because your sense of worth is no longer on the table. You are not a suitor seeking a queen's favor. You are a king of your own small, well-ordered kingdom, offering her a visitor's pass. And there is nothing more fascinating to a queen than a man who is already wearing his own crown. So, tell me this, you generous, open-hearted man, you who gives so freely. When you offer her the most precious parts of yourself, are you making a sacrifice of love? Or are you simply paying a tax to a ruler whose authority you have willingly and fatally accepted? The blade does not cut your throat. It severs you from your own power, so cleanly you don't notice until you try to lift your sword. There is a secret at the heart of the masculine terror. A truth so primal we have buried it under mountains of myth and bravado. We do not fear death. We do not even fear pain. We fear diminishment. We fear being made less. And this is the true function, the exquisite, horrifying purpose of the emotional guillotine. Freud, in his Viennese consulting room that smelled of old books and buried secrets, called it castration anxiety. A crude term, perhaps, that makes modern men snicker with nervous discomfort. But he wasn't talking about a literal fear of the knife. He was talking about a profound, spiritual dread. The dread of having your potency, your purpose, your very sense of masculine agency severed from you. And the executioner in this silent, bloodless drama is the power of female judgment. The cut is not violent. That is the genius of its cruelty. There is no screaming, no struggle. It happens in a quiet moment. It could be a look of pity from her when you speak of your grandest dream. It could be the way she casually mentions another man's success in a field where you have failed. It could be the final, calm, devastatingly reasonable tone in her voice when she says, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." Snip. The blade falls, and what you feel in that moment is not agony. It is a strange, unnerving lightness, a sense of being unburdened. The struggle is over. You are free. You walk away thinking you have survived. You may even feel a surge of defiant strength. It is only later, days or weeks later, that you notice the phantom limb. You reach for your ambition, that familiar, heavy sword you have always carried, and your hand closes on empty air. You try to summon your old confidence, your self-assured swagger, but you feel a hollow ache where its root used to be. You are whole, but you are no longer complete. You have been flawlessly, invisibly unmanned. In the shadowed valleys of the Apennines, old grandmothers used to frighten naughty boys with tales of the Fata Morgana, the sister of the void. She was not a monster of tooth and claw. She was an enchantress of breathtaking beauty who would lure lost travelers into her grotto, not to devour them, but to grant them their deepest wish. "You seem so burdened by your great strength," she would coo at a weary night. "Let me lighten your load." The knight would awaken the next morning feeling refreshed, his armor weightless. But when he tried to lift his sword to defend a village, he found it impossibly heavy. His muscles were still there, but the idea of his own strength was gone. To a frustrated poet, she would say, "Your passion is a fever. Let me cool your brow." He would leave her grotto feeling serene and clear-headed, but when he sat down to write, the ink would feel like sludge and the words would have no fire. She did not steal their abilities. She stole the metaphysical conviction that animated them. She left them as beautiful, perfectly functioning, hollow shells. This is the phantom limb of the soul. The guillotine does not remove your manhood. It removes your belief in your manhood, which is, in the end, the only thing that ever mattered. You become a ghost in the machine of your own life. This process has been accelerated to a fever pitch in our modern panopticon. This great digital gallery where you are constantly confronted with an endless parade of other men, their successes, their perfectly curated lives, their seemingly effortless power. Every image is a small, sharp nick from the blade. Her like on another man's post is the sound of the rope being tested. Modern psychological studies, dressed in the sterile language of social comparison effects on self-esteem, are merely charting the 1,000 tiny cuts by which a man is bled of his own sense of worth in this new, virtual coliseum. The hope here, and it is a desperate, gasping kind of hope, is not in learning to avoid the blade. The blade is everywhere. It is in every interaction, every comparison, every judgment. The only hope is to understand the nature of the amputation, to acknowledge the phantom limb, to stop reaching for the ghost of the man you were before the cut, and to start learning to operate as the man you are now. A man who has been severed from his own naive sense of completeness. This is a terrifying state of being. But it is also the beginning of true wisdom. A man who knows he is wounded is infinitely more dangerous and more resilient than a man who believes himself to be whole. He learns to fight with his other hand. He learns to rely on cunning instead of brute force. He learns to see the world not as a stage for his power, but as a complex, dangerous landscape that must be navigated with skill and a profound, intimate knowledge of his own limitations. So I will whisper this question to you, and I want you to answer it with terrifying honesty. Stand up. Walk across the room. Now tell me, which parts of you are really moving, and which are just the beautiful, aching ghosts of what you used to be? The sound that torments you is not her voice, it is the echo of the blade inside your own skull. The blade has fallen, swift and clean. The phantom limb begins to ache. But the ghost that haunts this silent scene is the sound the falling steel did make. After the cut comes the haunting. You tell yourself you are haunted by her. You see her face in crowds. You smell her perfume in empty elevators. You hear her name in the static between radio stations. You believe you are a man tormented by the ghost of a lost love. What a comforting, romantic lie. You are not haunted by her. She is a woman of flesh and blood, probably living a life of breathtakingly mundane reality somewhere. She is thinking about her taxes, her deadlines, what to have for dinner. She is not a spectral being concerning herself with the state of your soul. The entity that haunts you is far more intimate and far more terrifying. You are haunted by the echo of the blade. Imagine a magnificent bell in a high tower. This bell is your sense of self, your masculine pride, your belief in your own completeness. For years it has rung with a clear, resonant tone. Then she comes, and with a single, perfectly aimed strike, she cracks it. The bell is not destroyed. It still hangs there, but it can no longer produce its true note. Now, when the wind blows, it gives off a discordant, jarring, broken sound. A sound that is part public failure and part private agony. The person who struck the bell is long gone, but the wind keeps blowing, and the broken sound keeps ringing. Her final words, her look of disappointment, her casual act of rejection, that was the strike. Your mind, in the aftermath, is the bell tower, and the obsessive, looping thoughts that torment you are the wind, constantly blowing across the crack, recreating the sound of your own shattering over and over again. You are not replaying the memory to understand her. You are replaying it because your psyche is compulsively, traumatically drawn back to the scene of its own diminishment. It is a form of self-torture, disguised as romantic longing. Freud called this repetition compulsion. The traumatized mind, he realized, does not try to escape the memory of its trauma. It seeks it out. It compulsively restages the painful event in dreams, in thoughts, in new relationships, in a desperate, futile attempt to gain mastery over it. To somehow, this time, achieve a different outcome. But you cannot change the past. And so you are trapped, a prisoner in the bell tower of your own mind, forced to listen to the same broken note for eternity. There is a cruel story they tell about the prisons of the Papal States during the Renaissance. For a heretic deemed beyond redemption, there was a special punishment. He would be taken to a cell deep underground, a place of absolute silence and darkness. The executioner would not whip him or torture him. He would simply lean in and whisper a single, devastating truth into the prisoner's ear. His deepest insecurity, his most secret shame. Then he would leave, and the door would be sealed forever. The man would not go mad from the darkness or the solitude. He would be driven insane by the echo of that one single sentence. His own mind would become the torturer, repeating the executioner's words, twisting them, amplifying them, until it was the only reality he knew. Her rejection was that sentence, and your mind is that cell. The voice you hear criticizing you in the dead of night is not hers. It is your voice, doing a flawless imitation of her. The liberation, the first glimmer of dawn after this long, dark night of the soul, is not in trying to forget her. It is in correctly identifying the ghost. You must realize that the voice in your head is not a transmission from her. It is a broadcast from the wounded part of you. It is the echo, not the source. Once you understand this, you can begin the slow, arduous work of changing the acoustics of your own mind. You cannot uncrack the bell, but you can choose not to let the wind blow so fiercely. You can learn to hear the broken note arise, and instead of mistaking it for objective truth, you can recognize it for what it is, the sound of an old injury. You can learn to greet it with a kind of detached pity. Ah, you can say, there is the sound of the crack again. You are not the bell. You are not the broken note. You are the silent, listening space of the tower itself. You are the awareness that observes the sound without becoming it. So listen closely right now, in the silence between my words. That quiet, critical voice in the back of your mind, the one that is even now judging you, comparing you, reminding you of your failures. Is that really her? Or is it just the lonely, broken echo of a man you used to be? You do not heal from the wound. You build your throne beside it. So, here you are, in the ruins. The echo of the blade is now a part of the silence in your head. The phantom limb aches with a familiar, almost friendly rhythm. You have come to the end of the chase, the end of the performance, the end of the fight. And you are left with the one thing you have been running from all your life, your own undeniable, incurable imperfection, your wound, the place where the guillotine fell. And now you face the final choice. You can spend the rest of your life guarding this wound, hiding it, building a fortress of solitude and cynicism around it, or you can do something far more radical, far more terrifying. You can honor it. You have been operating under the assumption that the goal is to heal, to return to the man you were before the cut, the whole man. But that man was a fiction. He was an innocent, an untested boy living in a dream of his own completeness. The cut did not destroy him. It revealed his non-existence. You cannot return to a place you were never truly at. The goal is not to mend the wound. The goal is to make it sacred. In Japan, there is an ancient art form called kintsugi. When a valuable piece of pottery is broken, it is not thrown away. It is painstakingly put back together by master craftsmen. But they do not try to hide the cracks. They highlight them. They fill the fissures with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The lines of breakage become veins of precious metal. The object is not considered ruined. It is considered more beautiful, more valuable, for having been broken. Its history of damage is not a source of shame, but the very source of its unique, unrepeatable beauty. Your soul is that broken bowl. The emotional guillotine was the shattering blow. And your life's work, the great and terrible art you are now called to, is to practice kintsugi on yourself. You must learn to trace the lines of your own wound, the shame, the feeling of diminishment, the fear. Not with the lead of resentment or the dust of regret, but with the gold of pure, unflinching awareness. This is the final, terrifying inversion of everything you have been taught. Your greatest strength is not in your wholeness, but in your acknowledged brokenness. Your wound is not your weakness. It is your point of access to the human condition. It is the wound that gives you compassion. It is the wound that gives you depth. It is the wound that raises the proud towers of your ego and allows the seeds of true character to grow in the rubble. A man who has never been psychically castrated, who has never been brought to his knees by the power of female judgment, is a man who has never been forced to find out what he is really made of. He is a child playing with a wooden sword. A man who has survived the guillotine and learned to honor the scar. He is a king. This is the ultimate meaning of Nietzsche's amor fati. To love your fate. It means to love the blade, to love the fall, to love the echo, to love the phantom limb. It is to look back at the entire horrifying process and understand that it was not a tragedy, but a birth. It was the brutal, bloody, necessary labor that delivered you from the womb of your own naivety. True sovereignty is not to be the man who can never be cut. It is to be the man who can sit on a throne placed right at the edge of his own inner abyss. To rule from the heart of his own lack. He no longer needs a woman to be a mirror because he has the courage to look at his own fractured reflection. He no longer fears her tests because he has already subjected himself to the ultimate test and survived. He no longer fears her departure because he has made a home in the empty space she left behind. He is free. Not because he won the game, but because he has finally, truly walked off the board. And from this strange, quiet, and powerful place, a new kind of connection becomes possible. Not the desperate, needy grasp of the boy for his mother. Not the narcissistic performance of the actor for his audience, but the calm, respectful meeting of two sovereigns, each ruling their own wounded kingdom. So this is my final confession, my last will and testament to you. The guillotine was never the end of your story. It was the violent, shocking, and exquisitely merciful beginning of it. The cut was not a punishment. It was a coronation. And so, what will you do with your beautiful, golden scars? Will you hide them in shame, or will you hold them up to the light and let them shine?